My guest today is Mpeo Nkosi, a chartered marketer, brand strategist, consultant, moderator, MC, mother, wife, podcast host,
I know.
and voiceover artist.
And a voiceover artist. And actually, not so much a voiceover artist, actually, because there's only one voiceover I do. I've just been doing it for 20 plus years now.
How did that happen? Like, I never knew about the voiceover part.
So, 2004, I've got a very good friend of mine who is a producer, presenter, super sport at the time. And he used to be he still is the producer for the Orlando Pirates show Up the Bucks, which is my local soccer team, thank goodness. And his voiceover artist couldn't rock up that day. And he was like, "You can read English. You've got a good voice. I think you can do this. Can you do this for me?" And that was in 2004. And 20 plus years later, every single month, I still voice the Orlando Pirates TV show.
And that's the only...
So every now and then, of course, people ask me to like voice over something or play the voice of God in some kind of a show or something. Very few things, but really my voiceover work has predominantly been being the voice of my local soccer team, Orlando Pirates.
I guess it is helpful that you support the team.
It is very helpful that I support the team.
I don't support the team. We won't get into that. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Lesotho.
Yeah.
And I moved to South Africa very, very young. My mom was working for international relations at the time and been in South Africa since. I went to 8 different schools. I've lived in Johannesburg. I've lived in Vereeniging. Predominantly lived in Mafikeng. Buputatswana at the time arrived there in 1995. And then I've been in Johannesburg since after I matriculated in 98. And here I've probably lived in like 11 different places. So just a nomadic spirit, to be honest. Yeah. So that's really where I've grown up. So Mosotho, who has been South Africanized in all the ways, but Mosotho.
And all this jumping around, kind of, did you have an idea of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
You know, when I was younger, I wanted to be a lawyer. My mom was a lawyer. She's retired now. But I always wanted to be a lawyer. And then I got into school and fell into marketing. Actually started working at British American Tobacco at the time when we still had the kids driving around in the hot cars and hosting all the parties. And that's actually when I fell in love with marketing. And so it's kind of been my career ever since. I've worked for Mnet. I used to be their head of marketing. I've worked in the healthcare business. I've worked on the advertising side, on the corporate side. My last corporate gig was actually with MTN. So I've been in marketing predominantly most of my career, and I do love it as a discipline. But that's been my work. That's my vocation.
So the law was never something was it just an idea like, oh, that would be something really cool to do?
Yep. And I think what's nice about it is, in a lot of ways, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, I didn't study law, but being able to make a compelling argument and being able to tell stories is part of what marketing is all about. So I think I still get to tap into whatever it is that I loved about Ally McBeal or whatever it is that I loved about Law and Order. You still tap into that actually on an everyday basis from a marketing perspective. You need to look at the facts on the table. You need to decide how you're going to present them, how you're going to tell the story. So it fits. I think whatever, I've scratched that itch to some effect. So you can imagine that I've been quite obsessed with the Madlanga Commission and everything that's going on in the country. I'm glued to my screen all the time because I find it quite fascinating.
I think you touch on something that is interesting for me in terms of the conversations that I've had. Because there's to a certain extent, it's the separation of a skill or a capability from a job title or a function. I mean, when you talk about, for example, the commonality between being a marketer and a communicator and being a lawyer. And I remember talking to a young writer when I was still in magazines, and he was thinking about leaving the magazine. And I said to him, listen, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And his whole thing was, well, He's going to look at other publications. And I'm like, but you can write.
Yes.
Which means you have the ability to take a thought, to take something somebody has said and put it down into words.
Yes.
For me, that's the underlying or the overriding skill or capability.
Yes.
Where you actually apply it does not have to be
in that particular,
in that particular
because
field.
I think that's very limiting. And I think in a lot of ways, for me, even, you talked about some of the other things that I do, emceeing, moderating, being able to hold different points of view and be objective about it. Those aren't necessarily things that I went to school for or that I learned. It's just your ability to be able to look at things differently or look at things objectively. So I'm not, how can I say, attached to my own opinion. I think marketing teaches you that very quickly, because working with very different brands from very different industries, you're very quickly understanding that you need to have an objective point of view on things, and your ability to see different sides or see how somebody else would view something becomes very important. And I think that that's something that's so true. I think having, I've got 3 boys. The oldest is 23, and raising an adult is very different to raising kids. And raising an adult means that you actually need to be able to impart on them exactly that. That what do you like doing? And whatever it is that you like doing, don't let it be limited by whatever discipline you've learned or whatever thing that you went to school for. Think about the core skill that you've learned, the core characteristics that you have, and apply that to anything. Because then the world is kind of more open than just your discipline or what you studied. And I think that's the gift. I think I'm very lucky to have understood that quite early in my life, not to limit what industry I go to, or, so it wasn't like, I started marketing in fast moving consumer goods, so that's all I can do. No, I take that skill wherever I go.
How do you find your balance or your place in, you just said you'll have different clients. You're not necessarily vested in that client. It's not a product or a service or a company that you have any particular affinity for. But you still need to give it your best in terms of your creativity, your work, your understanding. Being somebody who has had the liberty of primarily working on things that I buy into personally, it's hard for me to fathom how you process that.
So I think for me, I think the thing about taking a product or a brand to people is actually the psychology of just consumers, how we make decisions, how we consider things, then how we buy, then how we use the product, then how we get rid of it or reuse it. That's really all you're trying to understand, is when I am taking this thing to Kojo, whatever that thing is, whether it's an insurance product or whether it's a sneaker or it's a television program, all I need to figure out is what will make Kojo consider it, buy it, use it, reuse it, watch it again if it's a television show, and make those two things come together. So I'm less married to the product than I am to what it is that is going to serve for Kojo the consumer, and what is going to make that true for him, and how do I tell the story that brings those two worlds together. So that's really what you obsess about, is you obsess about the storytelling, and you obsess about making the consumer interested. And there are, look, there have been brands that I've worked on where I've walked away from them because I kind of felt like, I don't know, the brand or the product might be a little too obsessed with themselves rather than what it is that they're going to give to the consumer. Then it becomes very difficult to tell that story. And when it's difficult to tell that story, you can feel where your world doesn't, intertwined with that of the product, and that will make it a little bit more difficult. That's just being honest, that is to say that there's going to be some brands, some products, some activities that I just can't gel with, because somehow there's a disconnect in my ability to tell the story.
I'm just thinking, because like I said, I've had the liberty of kind of I engage with what I want to engage with, and I step away from what I don't want to engage with. But also having never been, for example, in agency, where I'm playing a particular role, and therefore it's whatever comes across my table. And a part of me is kind of going, okay, maybe that's why I haven't gotten enough, as much work as I'd have hoped in terms of the kind of consulting and storytelling side. Because, I mean, I live and I'm built around, how do we tell people stories?
Yes.
How do I tell a brand story, an organization story, a moment story? And that's kind of what I sell. But because it's me, like it's tied to, it's not a company, it's
tied to you.
It's me, my personality and my character. If it's even slightly out of sync with my values or what I'm interested in, I'm just like, no, I'm not going to do it.
And I think that also comes with age, don't you think, Gojo? I think there was I don't know. I think let me just say, I've just gone through your switch moment where you realize that your life is yours to live, and whatever it is that you're filling up your time with, the very limited time that you have needs to be something that you really enjoy and that you are actually passionate about, and that you're willing to engage with more deeply than just surface level and paying the bills. And I mean, I made quite a big decision starting the podcast this year. That was like a big decision for me. It's something that I've been wanting to do. I was completely self-funded, no sponsors, nothing. I was
welcome.
I know it's a bit wild why anybody would do that, but you do it because it's something that you're like, I've always wanted to have these conversations. I've always wanted to sit across people and ask them questions and engage with them, not in an interview style, but in really having conversations that matters, and walking away from a corporate job where I felt like I feel like our values are misaligned, and making a decision that the first 23 odd years of my career, I worked a certain way. I allowed certain things into my life, and I want the next 23 years of that working life to feel different, to feel about, to feel like they're about me. And so it is that kind of, it might be the angst of maybe you won't get as much work as you previously did, but I feel like the amount of work that I have will be fulfilling. And that's what I'm leaning into, is that at least every moment of every day will be filled with stuff that I intentionally choose, versus kind of letting the bulls run me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I feel like that kind of disconnect, it can be a gift, being clear about what it is that you like and what you don't like, and what you value and what you don't value, and what's going to make every minute, every hour, every day more worth it than not enjoying it. I kind of want the next stage or the next chapter of my life not to be about chasing Friday.
It's so, for me, it's been interesting watching people like you and watching you starting to lean into that, because I never had that alternative.
Yes.
So, I mean, I started working for my father. So I've never had, or I very rarely had, that comfort, or stability of any type of kind of corporate. So that's wired me slightly differently. And to a certain extent, I reached that space of, actually, I'm going to focus on, with my limited time, I'm going to focus on X, Y, Z a lot more. It brought me to that, to a certain extent, sooner. because I mean, I was already making the sacrifices. So I was already feeling the pain
Yes.
of the sacrifices. So it's like, well, I might as well.
Yes.
So it's been interesting interacting with yourself, and we have a lot of friends in common, and watching everybody reach that point of going, I've had the stability, but it's been great, but it hasn't been like, I feel like there's another space, there's a step up.
And I think, you know, what's so interesting, I recently had a conversation with a very good friend of mine who, like you, has probably been she's been an entrepreneur her whole life. And, you know, we had this moment where she was talking to me about like this fallacy of that stability is actually stable, you know. So as an entrepreneur, she's like, I've never wanted to work for somebody because I want to see the road ahead. Like when you're working for somebody else, you don't know if the business is going down. You don't know if there's going to be retrenchments. You don't know. You're actually not as stable as you think you are, number one. And number two, the fact that even being an employee, a full-time employee, is entrepreneurship of sorts. You're selling something and you're getting paid for it. That's all it is. And the minute that you can change your mind about that or recognize that, then you realize that there are sacrifices that you're also making, whether those sacrifices are family time, just time, owning your freedom. There are sacrifices that you are making. There is an instability there, and there is something that you're selling. And the minute that you can see yourself as an entrepreneur, no matter what path you're choosing, the more you're going to be quite clear about whether it's worth your time or not, whether it's worth you know, that limited time or not, and what sacrifices you're willing to make. Look, I feel like school doesn't teach us enough about adulting. Not at all. You just kind of figure it out later. Life skills actually needs to be a much stronger topic, I feel like, at school, for sure. Because I think we figure out a lot of this stuff along the way, and sometimes in the harshest of ways, unnecessarily so.
But you talk about raising and guiding an adult. Often our parents told us this stuff. We just didn't hear it.
That is true.
So, you know, I think there's certain aspects of, there's certain things in life where, unfortunately, you have to go through it
To understand it.
And I've started, it's not an argument, but to the frustration of some people I've interacted with over the last 3-4 years, often I'll be having a discussion with somebody, for example, in their 20s, and they will tell me what they think, and I'll tell them what I think. And the minute it starts to feel like a back and forth, I'm like, actually, do you know what? Let's have this conversation in 10 years' time.
Actually.
Because I'm like, we can go back and forth. I'm not going to convince you. You're not going to convince me. But I feel, and I start to feel like the old guy, like you still need life to throw some more things at you for us to be able to have this conversation on a more level playing field. So yeah, our parents did tell us some of these things.
They did, and we weren't hearing them. And you're right, we weren't hearing them because of a lack of experience. And I think in a lot of ways, I've tried to, with my son, be a lot more open-minded to hearing his perspective, taking his lack of experience into consideration, and taking into consideration the same way as I'm sure my parents did not understand the world I was growing up in. I'm very clear I don't understand what it's like to be a digital native. I really don't, you know. I think we've had this conversation before where I'm like, we are analog people in a digital world. We've lived both. They don't have that kind of analog experience. It gave us something that they just don't have, a perspective that they don't have, you know, the ability to like wait on a phone call where, you know, you have to be at the right place at the right time. It wasn't on your cell phone. It was like 7 o'clock, maybe your friend will call you on the landline. That in itself gave us something about waiting that I think we are very impatient with the young adults of now, because we feel like they don't have any patience, any ability to wait. But I think it's a function of the environment that they've been born into. So I try and be quite understanding and objective, but also there are those arguments as well that I have with my son where I'm like, I actually don't think you'll understand where I'm coming from until you've lived a little bit more life.
Yeah, I'm at the stage where my son's 18 now. In trying to figure out the letting go part, the realizing that this is another stage, and what does that look like? Having been extremely present,
yes,
for at least the last 10 years, having literally been there all the time. And now realizing that, and so I made that decision because I was never home. And now it feels like the opposite. Like I have moments where it's like, okay, maybe I was a bit too present. And because of that, it's that, okay, how do I loosen the rope a little bit, but still be there to guide?
Yeah. So that's so interesting because actually I think the big realization for me was, and obviously different stages, different things. I mean, like I've got the whole ambit of children. I've got a 23-year-old, 8 and 5. So I've got, my life is going to definitely
You're
be my
still
children.
in for the
One
long
I
haul.
gave my whole youth to, the other ones I'm going to give my whole pension to. It's a thing. But I think what's a big realization for me with my adult child is actually what I was mourning was the control, if I had to be honest. The being present, you can still do. It's just that after 18, it's presence with very little, if any, control. And that's what scares us, I feel like, as parents, is I had some control. Exactly what you're saying. How do I let go of the reins? But you had reins. Like you could pull in, pull out, you could. And now at 23, it's like I have no control. His life is his. And in fact, so presence becomes even more important. My presence, my guiding, my what's going on, that becomes even more important, actually. But I had to mourn that control, which, especially, 18 years is a long time to be in somebody's life and to walk a journey with them. And to know that for 18 years, I actually had a lot of control over how far they could go. And now they're going into the stage where I have to mourn that control completely and trust that I've done the best job that I can. I mean, how many people can let go of anything that they've had for 18 years?
So true.
Yeah. And so for me, it's the mourning of the control.
And so it becomes when I think back to, say, 2025 for you, right? You've had to contend with quite a bit of change.
A lot of change.
And kind of leaving stuff to the universe.
Scariest thing.
I'm thinking you're talking about, you're talking about your adult son. But one of the things I also realized, I was looking at your bio, right? Your work journey. And what's it, Libandi Communication?
Yes.
You were actually running it in what, 2017?
Yes.
2017 to 2020?
Yeah.
And then you went back into corporate, and now you've gone back into that, started a podcast, dealing with a 23-year-old. I suspect there's a lot we can all learn from what you've been manifesting, also going through. What has there been a thought process and a plan behind that?
This time, yes. When I look at my career and how I've moved, I've often connected the dots backwards. I think what happened to me in the last 2 years is I left when I started my business the first time, I actually was retrenched, and I decided, let me just give corporate a little bit of a break. And worked, and it did really well in finding retained work. But in a lot of ways, I was still working as an employee, if you know what I mean. My work was retained, but it wasn't like I had full control over my time. and, got into some agency work that I really enjoyed, and then got pulled into going back into corporate with a dangle of the dangle that corporate always gives you, more money, a bigger role, whatever it is. But I wasn't unhappy where I was, and got into a corporate role where I very quickly realized that this is going to make me unhappy. But because we like control, we don't like to be seen to fail. And why would you leave this amazing job? I hung around in that job for 2 years when I already knew within 3 or 4 months that it wasn't going to be working for me. And when I made the decision to kind of say, okay, I'm leaving this organization. And in fact, I'm not just leaving this organization. I want to try and walk into a space where I can give myself the room to decide what I want this next chapter to look like. And that's going to mean giving myself the time to think and not to be beholden to somebody else. So that means building up the consultancy again, relying on the relationships that I already had to be able to sustain me from a financial perspective, doing this podcast that I've been threatening myself to do forever. And actually it's just been, how can I say, like a fear, like this, this fear that you have that will I be any good at it? And I had to change the question to, would you enjoy it? Because being good at it is asking for validation externally. Will Kojo like it? Does it matter? Will you enjoy it? Are you going to enjoy having the conversation with Kojo that you've always wanted to have? The conversation with a coach or a therapist? Because one of the big things that drove the podcast was this fact that I felt like there were so many conversations, and the blessing that I had been given to have therapy, coaching, that I just felt like there were so many people that needed to hear some of the things that I had learned. And so leaning into that was very scary and intentional, in that the only thing that I was intentional about was, we need to figure out how the next 23 years of life are not like the previous 23. That was really it. Because my exhaustion, my burnout, my whatever it may be that I had gone through, say maybe 2 or 3 times in my career, I was the common denominator. So clearly, wherever I was going, there I was. And that person was high performing, with a high functioning anxiety, doing much more than anybody else around her, and in some ways working so hard that I was actually also making the teams that I worked with, the people that I worked with, push themselves much harder than required for what was needed. And that was a me thing. It was kind of like, I'm very clear that my relationship with work is not a healthy one. That when I do get involved in projects or whatever it may be, I over-invest in a way that makes the rest of my life out of kilter. And I'd like to do things differently. I'd like to be able to see my children grow. I got so sick the last 2 years, and that is because, within 3 months, you're not supposed to be there, but you hold on for 2 years, you're going to make yourself physically sick. Yeah. That is just the science of stress. You know what I mean? And so I knew that I want to be able to enjoy my children more. I got married in 2016. I was 36 at the time. So it's not like I've been in this long marriage. I'm still very much a newlywed. Yes, 10 years next year, but very much a newlywed. And I wanted to enjoy that. I wanted to enjoy the other roles in my life than just the provider. You know what I mean? Just the provision part of your life, which I think we can get very obsessed with, because you want to achieve certain material things. You want to be able to travel. So I thought when I got into that job, but I actually realized I was traveling more with less money than I was with the amount of money I was making when I went back into corporate. And that was because the amount of time you have to enjoy all of this labor of your work is not actually there. And so I needed to take a moment, take a beat to kind of say, how do we shape the next 23 years? And what does that require of me? And what does that then require that I put into my world? And I've really enjoyed it. I mean, this past year has been very illuminating and very frightening all at the same time. Being able to say I control my time. I only work 3 days a week, which is what I've done the whole year. Only working 3 days a week, spending more time with my children, with my family, having those conversations, having this podcast and talking to people I've always wanted to talk to. about topics that I'm very interested in, that I also feel like would be really helpful to other people, and not being obsessed with the outcome. It's like I maybe look at my stats like every quarter or something, but not being obsessed with that.
Such a hard thing. It's a hard thing to navigate and manage.
Yeah.
The not obsessing about stats. I've found, I mean, I've been doing this, 4 years now?
Yes.
It's a constant, I'm constantly having to remind myself of exactly what you're saying, that why am I doing it?
Why am I doing it?
Yes, there's a part of me that wants to build it and hopes more and more people listen, et cetera, et cetera. And, at some stage for it to take on another life beyond, beyond where it is. But yeah, if you can look at the stats every 10 minutes and all you do is you frustrate yourself.
You frustrate yourself. And because for me, that why was quite important, because it was how well I pick the people that I want to talk to, because we are going to have a conversation that really matters to me, and that I'm going to enjoy and get out of. It's been a therapy for me. I haven't had a therapist this year, because actually my podcast guests have been my therapy, the talking about stuff that I really enjoy doing. And that for me has been the benefit. It has benefited other people to listen into those conversations. But because I have gone in with the intention of what can I learn, I feel like it's allowing other people to tap into that as well. And in fact, my stats, if I had to look at the stats, they don't match the very anecdotal, maybe 10 people. There's more than 10 people listening. But the 10 people who have bumped into me and said, oh my goodness, Mpeo, your podcast, and this is what I learned and I loved this guest, have actually been more rewarding to me than whatever numbers I'm seeing on some dashboard. And because I come out of corporate where everything is about targets and performance, I needed to be very clear that this can't be about the dashboard.
Yeah.
It can't be about the dashboard, because I am trying to break a cycle of actually looking for external validation to be a measure of the value of my work.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's been scary, and it's been scary because I'm doing something I've never done before, which is owning my time. And doing what I want to do. That's scary. It's scary because also you worry about how sustainable it is. I do have 3 children. Life is still very long for them, and God willing for me too. So it really is just about. We only get one turn. I'd like it to be a little bit more intentional. I think I've kind of, it is that kind of thing that, like, maybe in the earlier years of your life, you're allowing life to pull you by the nose rather than you dictating what you want for your life. And I'd like that to be the intention with which I now go into every year is, okay, what kind of life do I want to live and how can I make that happen?
The decision to get married at your 36?
30s, yeah.
In your 30s. Having been a professional for so long, having, carved your life and been responsible for yourself and your life and those around you, what goes into that kind of decision?
Oh, such a good question. And the reason why it's such a good question is because I don't think there was a profound intentionality. It really was. I mean, I fell pregnant when I was 20. By my 21st birthday, my firstborn was around. So my life was really me and my son, and I kind of already decided, I don't think I'm going to have any more children. Don't care if I get married. And in fact, on my 35th birthday, I remember telling my friends, I think we were around the dinner table, I was like, if I don't meet my person by next year, then I don't think it's ever necessary. And you know how the universe is like, test me. Oh, okay, right? Babes, wait for it. And literally within that year, my husband, I'd known him for a long time. He'd been in my world. When I say in my world, he's a friend of a friend. He's been at parties, he's been at gatherings, he's been around, but I'd never seen him in that way. And we got married in 3 months. Within a year, we had our son. And within a couple more years, we had 3 sons, the 3 of us is this beautiful blended family. And I promise you, and I say to you, the only thing that was clear to me at that time was, should I do something like this on a permanent basis? In other words, getting married. That's a permanent basis. They are foundational things that I want us to agree on. So it really wasn't the airy-fairy thing that you might do in your 20s where you're just like, oh, I love this person, It was really the thing that I would love out of marriage is partnership, friendship, and being able to raise a family. And those 3 things were very much a shared value. And so being married 10 years from a 3-month courtship is a gift I know that the universe gave to me. I cannot say that it was just me. I was really gifted my person for my personality, for my flaws, for the things that I needed to grow in. I was gifted that person. And I think because I didn't try and make it because it didn't feel like a me decision, I almost trust the universe so much to help guide this relationship, going forward, because I really do feel like it was a gift.
Because I asked that question because I'm fascinated by, I didn't get married young. I was 30. I turned 30 there, I got married. And, I've seen people get married younger. But more and more I'm seeing people get married when they're properly adults.
Yes.
Right? But also, people getting married and not having children.
Yes.
And not, one never knows the circumstances behind it. But kind of seeing a couple, seeing 2 individuals, and it's just the 2 of them, and they're building a life and they're living a life that is great for both of them. And because I'm seeing that more and more, like I'm fascinated by, what that decision-making process is. Because also, I was actually randomly, this crossed my mind last night, like I've never been part of organized religion. And so my idea of marriage is not rooted in
some doctrine. It's not rooted in a doctrine,
So even for me, it was a bit more of a decision. It was a bit more around, okay, our values, and less tied to, love or the sanctity of marriage or all these, especially, particularly with Christianity, all these things that it's cloaked around. And I've been married for 23 years.
That's a long time. Congratulations. I call you guys the BC gang, the Before Christ gang. Anybody who's been married for more than 20 years.
I always joke and I say when it was 5 years, I'm like, it was 5, but felt like 20. So now it's over 20 and I don't know what it feels like. But yeah, so I'm constantly looking at other people and going, it's really interesting, and it's also cool to see people making
choices for themselves,
making choices without that baggage.
And I'll tell you, I'll put it to you this way, because it is something that I am also very fascinated in, but not only fascinated in, I also think, how can I say, almost passionate about, in terms of how I speak with my sisters, or how I know I'll be, how I speak with my adult son about, there is no such thing as rites of passage. Like, you must get married, you must have children, you must have a 9-to-5. The musts are broken, and I want and I hope for people to just be choiceful about your life. Make your own decisions, because what a gift that is, and that comes from my own personal experience of, I was raised by a single mom. My dad was around, but I always say, after doing a lot of therapy after my dad passed, I actually, when I started looking at him as a human being and took the role of father away from him, I started to understand him a little bit more. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned was around the fact that if he was born at a different time, if he was born now, for example, my father may have chosen not to be a dad or a husband. Might have been a choice that he made because he was a wonderful friend, he was a wonderful sibling, he was a wonderful son, he was very thoughtful about those things. He loved his life, he had a colorful life, he used to DJ, he had this world that was so full. But there were these two roles that I think he took on because of the rules of society at the time. You must get married and you must have children. Two roles that I think if he had the choice, he might not have chosen those. And so he might not have, in inverted commas, he might not have failed at them in the eyes of these people that he needs to play this role for, if you get what I'm saying. And so for me, I really am passionate about speaking to people that there's no rite of passage. So don't feel like you must get married to get value, or you must have children to have some kind of value, or you must have a high-paying job, or a Merc or a double-story home, or there is no rites of passage. There's only your life.
Yeah.
And you need to be quite choiceful about what it is that fulfills you, and because having children is a big responsibility. Being married is a big responsibility. Is it a responsibility you want? And if you don't want it, that's also fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that is also fine. That is absolutely okay. And I think allowing people to make their own choices, and being open to what people's choices are that are completely different to your own, I think helps us answer that question in a way that actually makes me quite happy, that the difference in family structures, when people get married, how they get married, lots of people elope, they don't have big weddings, they don't have any weddings at all, you know what I mean? That for me, I think just increases the diversity of our world, and I actually love it. I love it for people who make different choices that don't fit the mold, that don't fit the script. I like it when people live off script.
I think also when we talk about, our children are living in a world of it's partially of our making.
Yes.
But it's very different from the world that we grew up in. And for me, the positives are what you just talked about, which is actually they do not have to live by the rules or the guidelines, the suggested guidelines that we had to grow up with. And they can start being, because my favorite word is deliberate. They can be a bit more deliberate
and choiceful,
about the things that they do and the paths that they go down and the lives that they live. Whereas we are coming to that at a later stage.
Where we're choosing it for ourselves and realizing, I've been following a script that I don't
Whereas
have
our parents didn't have that liberty. So for me, that's the progression, right? It's like our parents didn't have that liberty. We at least at a later stage can start to go, there's a different way of living. And for them, they can actually go, well, why must I wait till later? I can already start living like that now.
Yeah. I think the let me say the other side of that coin, which for me I realize is the scripts make us lazy in our thinking sometimes in terms of what we want for our lives, but it also decreases the amount of choice that you need to make. So our parents had scripts, we had scripts that we can break later in life as they get older and become our children, and now they don't dictate to us anymore. You can actually make some of your own decisions. I think part of the thing that is scary for me, for this generation, is that it seems that the lack of a script really scares them. It makes them afraid to make any kind of choice. Whereas I think in a lot of ways, we didn't have a lot of choices. It was like, you're going to varsity, so you go. Whether you like it or not, you'll figure it out later. You're dating this person, you will get married to them if you've now been dating for 5 years. And then you will have children. So there was this script that was almost like laid out in terms of what is the pathway from birth to death. And I think our kids now are kind of like, one, I don't want a script, but I also don't know what the script is for my life. And so therefore I can feel a little bit paralyzed by the amount of choice that I have, which is something that I see a lot of young people are struggling with, is because I can literally be whatever I want to be. What is that? But I still have a little bit of anxiety that the script that my parents lived with, so our generation, is that they're putting me under pressure to make that choice by whatever that script that they had was, which was 21, or 21 probably is what our script was. By 21, you better know what your story is. And they kind of like, I need a little bit more time because I have a lot more choice to make what that decision is. And our job is to kind of guide them without knowing, because we don't know what that's like to live without a script, is to kind of say, okay, then write the rules, just do something, and you can change your mind. Because I think one of the greatest things that I try and tell my son is do something and know that you can change your mind, because we kind of had to do something and then stick with it. I'm saying do something. If it doesn't work, you can change your mind. But I think for me, it's in the action. It's in the keep moving, just momentum. Just keep some momentum. Whether you go this route and then you turn and you go the other route and you go another route, that's okay. That's okay. As long as you don't stop moving. That for me, I think, is the only guidance I can think about where there isn't a script, is just don't stop moving, So I remember one of the things that when my son wanted to take a gap year, which wasn't really a gap year, because he kind of said to me he wanted to go and play soccer. He eventually got injured, so he didn't become a professional, but he wanted to go play soccer. And he said to me, if I was going to go study accounting, by way of example, you would commit your finances, your time to 4 years of an accounting degree. Some are asking for the same. I'm just asking for 4 years, And I kind of had to say to him that, okay, fine, I have one rule. My only rule is that you're not allowed to sit on my couch and scratch your balls every day. That's my only rule. So if this is what you want to do, then do it, and do it intentionally. And then life happened and he got injured, and, while he was injured, he started learning how to DJ and playing music. And now he's kind of in that music and eventing space, and knowing that that's okay. You can change your mind, which is something I don't think we had the gift of from the generation before us, which our big advice was finish what you start, And I think my big advice to the next generation, my son particularly, is know you can change your mind. It's okay to change your mind. It's completely fine.
So I come from a slightly different place. Listening to you speak, I haven't thought through what that framework looks like, because I have changed directions constantly. And even when I worked with my family, where I had a job, like I worked in family businesses, but like through university, we had 3 different businesses that were in 3 different areas. So, when I got back from university, my father said, I've started an IT company. I'm old, you're young. You figure out this computer stuff. And we had a management consulting company, and he had shut down an insurance brokerage, and I had a shop selling hair products. And then we went into the IT company, and I was doing identification technologies and specialized software. And then he started a newspaper. But it was still within the framework of the company, right? But after that, over the last 15 years, since 20 plus years that I've been in Joburg, I've worked in multiple different industries. So I encourage people, oh yeah, I agree with the keep it moving. I also believe you must finish what you started, even if it takes a year. And then after the year, you can go start something else, right? But listening to you speak, I'm thinking, I don't have a framework around that thinking. And it's important because boundaries, like you're saying, with this generation, there's too much option can also be paralyzing. So there needs to be an element of boundaries. And I remember having an argument with my son because he's grown up in a house where it's like, you can do and be anything you want to be. Just commit to something.
Just commit, yeah.
And then having a teacher saying to him, if you want to build a career, in the traditional sense, you must do this, this, this. And he's arguing for that. And just listening to you speak, I'm like, the flip side is also a problem. The parent who says, oh, you must go and do this and you must study and you must go and, that's a problem. That's what we had. But a parent is just going, yo, dude, like,
whatever.
Tell me what it is. And then we'll figure out what you must do to do that.
Yes.
Is also a problem.
Yeah. And I think for me, that's the thing, is there is no right way. We don't, there is no fail-safe guarantee. If you do track A, you'll be successful. If you do track B or track C, you'll be successful. If anything, if life and experience has taught us anything, is nothing is guaranteed, other than going back to right at the beginning of our conversation around the skills, the characteristics that you've built over time. How do you apply that to wherever you are in your life at that moment?
Yeah.
Is actually the only guidance we can give, because even hearing you speak and you're saying, I've changed directions so many times. In fact, what you're saying is that I've become unconsciously competent at that. So I don't even see it as a framework. I actually haven't thought about what did it take in me and around me for me to be able to change directions so easily over time. It is something that you learned even in hindsight, that you could look back on and say, okay, what is it when things change that didn't make me spin out and completely lose it? Like, what just kept me moving? And when I went into IT, and when I was standing and reading my poetry, and when I'm writing, and what is it about me as a person that allows me to be a chameleon in that way without changing my core form? You know what I mean? And allowing that to be a way to even guide your son or anybody else who says, I'd like to apply my mind to this track, which is it's got steps in it. But to be able to say, okay, even if you want to go that way, which I wouldn't know how to do that because that's not how I've lived my life. But I do know that as hardships come, as changes come, as things change, because even on a fixed road, there's going to be things that come in. The thing you can learn from me, somebody who's zigzagged, are these things. And I think that there's sometimes where we aren't giving ourselves grace to understand how it is that we've survived this long and apply that. And you do have a framework, I guess is what I'm saying. You maybe haven't applied your mind to what it took, but you have a framework for how to handle zigzagging that somebody who's going the linear route can learn from, and vice versa, right? Because for me, watching, I watch my sisters who inspire me so much, and they've studied really hard, etc. Also a little bit of a zigzag, but more linear, I think, in a lot of ways. And their ability to commit to something and do it and go and decide not to quit until the very end is something that I could learn from, although I don't call it quitting anymore. I think there was a time when I used to feel like, am I quitting? Whereas I have now reframed, as you can hear from the language that I've been using, I changed my mind. It was no longer serving me, so I changed my mind. And I think the minute that you can do that, there is a difference between failure where you're giving up versus you've pushed it as far as you can go and you're deciding to change your mind. But in changing your mind, you don't stop moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have admiration for people who can do that, can literally focus on one thing, and like even from a craftsman perspective, like become so good at one thing. And a part of me wishes I could do that, and I'll be like, yeah, for this thing, I'm gonna do it.
Yes.
And then before I know it, I've added 5 other things to it. What's exciting you right now?
What is exciting me right now? I think what is exciting me right now is, and scaring me is the unknown. I really am in my place of the unknown. It's like, we're sitting here. I don't know when this is going to air, but we're sitting here towards the end of 2025. And I have never gone into a year not being exactly clear what I'm doing, whether that's which job I'm going into or where I'm going to be staying or whatever it may be. I'm in that space where it's like, oh, I'd like to move out of the area that we live in now, might put up our house for sale, which clients will I be working on next year? I don't know as yet. Which guests will I have on the podcast? In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I was asking myself, do I even want to do a season 2? So I'm in this space of having to be comfortable with the unknown and allowing the fear of that, because I've never been in that space before, to live alongside it rather than let it drive the car. Like, how can I live alongside this uncertainty in a way that allows me to enjoy the gift of what it's giving me, right? Which is time. I have time on my hands. But I know that I need to trust in the skills, the character that I've built over time, that it will sustain me going into the next year, no matter what happens. And that is a testing of myself. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about seeing what's in store without having it being right in front of me, and seeing what the universe will bring into my world next year. It's a very different place for me, but it does excite me that I'm allowing it to happen. And scared as I am, I'm doing it scared. So that's all you can do.
I like that you said you're looking at, for example, the podcast, going, do I even want to? Because it becomes easy to get caught up in I started this process and this is what it looks like when you start a process like this, and this is what you do. So I do a first season now and you come from marketing and branding perspective, I've created this entity, and we get caught up in the idea of it. Like, I created this entity, therefore I should have a season 2, should have a season 3. How am I going to elevate it? And it's beautiful to see you continue to embrace that uncertainty with, I don't know if I'll do another one or not. And whether I do or not, it's all right either way.
And I think luckily when you're doing a project that was of your own making, self-funded, for you, for a particular reason, that decision is up to you. And that is, when I was grappling with that question, I think I really tried to remember the intention. The podcast is called Amandla, the Power Within, because it was really about, like, how do I build my own power within myself to not be reliant on external validation, to not be reliant on that. What are some of the things in my parenting, in my marriage, in my friendships, in what I enjoy? How do I allow those things to cultivate the power within myself? And I think as season 1 wrapped, somehow the universe was like, let's test if you've learned anything. Because I started to get a lot of unsolicited, positive feedback on the podcast. And the question I had to ask myself was, do I want to make a season 2? Because hearing people say they enjoy it makes me feel good in that external validation way. Or do I actually want to do a season 2? Are there more conversations I would like to have that I feel like are going to be, with the intention of the podcast, are going to be valuable not only to me, but to the tribe of people who are asking themselves the same questions, right? Or am I going into it with Kojo said it was great, and I value Kojo's opinion, or somebody said it was great and actually I didn't even know that they were listening to the podcast. Am I leaning into my learned behavior of valuing a lot of external validation, or is this something that I would still enjoy doing? Because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of preparation. It takes a lot of time in the editing. It's a commitment, and it's a commitment that in doing it, then your intention needs to be sound. And I suppose because it's not like I did it because I was like, oh, I want to create a revenue stream, where it's like I'm selling the audience that I have to somebody. And so if company A comes and says, talk about washing powder this episode, I can weave it in, or whatever it may be. The reason I did it self-funded with no sponsors, with nothing, is because I didn't want to be dictated to about what the content needed to be. And so I want to be true to that in saying the only reason that I do a season 2 must be because there are more conversations that I truly believe I'd like to have with the tribe of people around me, and some that are coming on the journey, but also to then say, once it has developed a character of its own, built from my intention, should it be funded, the right people will come along who respect the tribe, the conversation, the etc. Nothing that's going to change the essence of that. Because there's other ways I generate revenue, I make money, I pay the bills, and this was never intended to be one of them. Should it become a revenue generating channel? Thank goodness, that would be great. But I think even in that, it would need to match my value set. And so I don't want to fall into the trap of doing it for the wrong reasons, because I don't want to do anything for the wrong reasons anymore. Like I said, I'm in the chapter of what was the word that you used that I really like? Intentionality. You used a different word.
Being
Deliberate. I want to be a lot more deliberate about what this next chapter looks like. And I need to hold myself accountable to the fact that being deliberate is going to require that I ask myself some hard questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gojo.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. Please leave a review and subscribe. Check out the show notes for links to the guest, the podcast, and myself. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.